one of the things the CEO taught me was emotional intelligence. Employees are going to get mad at you because you're sitting in the room when they get terminated, and you build relationships with these employees, right? They get to know you. They come and tell you stuff. You're kind of their mediator. My manager's being mean to me. Can you help me? Can we go talk to him? Whatever, right? So you build those relationships. But this guy taught me emotional intelligence. And that's where I think from there, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, you know?
Welcome to today's Heart of the Hustle. I am here with Rory Money, the greatest name on the planet for someone who helps small businesses save money. I love it. So, Rory, tell us about you.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I'm Rory Money. I'm the founder of Magnet HR Group, and we are a small boutique payroll service provider that helps small to mid-sized businesses with payroll, human resources, benefits, workers' comp, and risk management.
Okay. What's your definition of small to medium-sized businesses? I'm sure there is a definition, like a formal definition out there, but I find people using that a lot. So tell us what your definition is.
Any company that we can bring on 3 employees, because 3 employees, you can have benefits.
Oh, okay.
So group benefits, yep. So 3 employees up to about 500 employees, but our real sweet spot when it comes to human resources and HR is about 75 to 150.
At that size, do people usually have an in-house HR department, or is it kind of trying to be managed by a whole bunch of people who aren't officially HR and therefore they need help?
Yes. So that's more like it, yeah. Companies really don't hire HR managers or generalists as a more lower level, but until about maybe 100, 150 employees. For our clients, we provide that HR service. So it's more of giving that support when you can't hire an HR director, someone like me at $175,000, right? An HR director at 25 years experience.
At what point do companies need to bring in their own HR person?
I think when companies get probably around 125 employees, you really want someone on site to help that the employees can go to and that are there. For our clients, we do have larger clients. We have our on-site contact, and I'll also go on site to visit our clients as well when they need it. But for the most part, when us as an outsourced HR company, they contact us whenever they need us, right? So for example, this morning, I got a phone call. It's a pretty large group, but the CFO called and needed some help because one of the employees crashed a vehicle.
Oh, I hope everybody's okay.
Yes, they are.
Good.
But, it was kind of like, well, do they owe us back? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, whose insurance covers it?
Yeah. And so what is our legal, parameters that we can work with? And did he sign anything to deduct any payment from his paycheck? So we kind of went down that road of as to, what's legal, not legal, what could be a Department of Labor wage claim.
And it's so important to have somebody you can call for that. And even if I would imagine that even if you're, let's say 125 people, you wouldn't be able to hire someone with a, 20 plus years of experience, right? You're not going to be able to pay that kind of salary. You could get a generalist, right? But they're not going to know sort of, the ins and outs of the legalities and what do they need to be signing and those types of things, right? So it's good to have somebody like you helping.
Yeah, for sure. And, we have a team of people. So it could be anywhere from, payroll questions, how to set up your deductions. I think that's, we run into even some of the larger ones that may have HR on site and not understanding the taxes if they're in multiple states, right? So I think just having that support team, for these companies to call is really beneficial.
Yeah, because getting your payroll processed can be expensive. I know I was talking to my accountant the other day, and we're in the LLC versus S Corp, and but then you have to do payroll, and at what point does it make sense to pay for the payroll and so forth? Because it's a significant cost.
It is. There's some our competitors out there that we call the Cadillac, service providers. And I would say, comparably, we offer the same services. We offer that HR support, payroll, taxes, tax filings, medical insurance, dental vision, short-term disability, long-term disability, any kind of voluntary benefits, as well as risk management and workers' comp. So even though we offer the same service, we're more boutique. And we like to get to know our clients. We like to get to know their business, and we like to get to know their employees. So those employees can reach out to us individually, and we get that a lot.
Yeah, because it's important for the employees to have someone to go to too, because they're not always going to be comfortable going to an executive, or if you don't have an HR person in the office. I've been in that situation, and it's really scary as an employee where you're like, I need an HR person, right? I'm getting sexually harassed, or I didn't get my paycheck or whatever, right? You need somebody who you can go to.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's so many laws that change. Rather, employment law is pretty across the board, right? Whatever company you may be in, or industry or organization. But it's that certain situation that companies don't think about. And, let me call HR, let me call Magnet HR to get their input on how we terminate this employee. And it's so important because if an employee comes back, you fire them, and they've told you 2 weeks ago that they were sick and going in for a biopsy, and you decide to terminate them, you're probably going to have an EEOC claim on your hands. And it's not that you maybe did anything right or wrong, but it's the fact that you're going to have to get legal to get involved. It gets costly, and most likely it's going to end up in a settlement.
Yeah, because you're not an attorney, but you're able, you've been around long enough that you're like, okay, this is what I understand from the attorneys I've worked with in similar situations.
Yes, definitely. And it can get expensive.
Yeah.
Into the $1 million range, $5 million range. And, it could be anywhere from harassment to age discrimination to, gender discrimination. So there's all sorts of avenues when it comes to employers being incompliant, and they think, they're not going to do anything. And then you get slapped with the EEOC, letter, and it's like, oh, what do I do with that? Well, now you have to take it to your attorney. Well, guess what? That attorney is going to want a retainer. And you can have EPLI insurance.
What's that?
So employer protection liability insurance.
Okay.
And so it covers certain stuff, but it won't cover, like, if I'm correct, Department of Labor and wage claims, but it will cover the employment law aspect of it. So a lot of companies, depending upon the size, they may have a $1 million policy, $10 million policies. I believe they go up to 10 million, but a lot larger companies will have that EPLI for coverage.
Interesting.
For those lawsuits.
Yeah, because it happens.
It does happen.
Whether it's because someone's a jerk or it just, there's a misunderstanding, right? Things happen.
And employees get savvy nowadays. They get really savvy. So they know if they're working for a company and you're not treating them well, they know what their route is to go get an EEOC claim filed and hopefully, probably get a settlement at some point. But yeah, I've seen a lot throughout my years. I think the one thing I would say in the 25 years, even working for larger companies and dealing with smaller companies, is I have never had an employment law claim come through. So
that's awesome.
I think it's just, how you deal with the employee and being that mediator between, whether they be their manager or the CEO or whoever it may be. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
That's why I think it's so important to have HR, because I have worked at companies that don't have it. And when issues like that come up, unless they have somebody on call, it's real hard to navigate those. And if you don't know the law, you can get in trouble real quick.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's like anything, right? It's like auto insurance. You need it or you don't need it until you need it.
Yeah.
And you have to pay for it, and it's there, but it does help. And, simple things like write-ups and corrective actions, how you state stuff. If you're putting stuff in writing, make sure you're okay with that going to court, because that's what's going to happen if you get that far, right? And a lot of cases do end up in, federal courts. So it can be pretty costly to an employer.
Yeah, it's better to have the HR team there and available. And there's lots of other ways you can save money with HR. I know in our prep for today, we talked about payroll and how some of, the Cadillac companies charge so much and just the amount because you're a boutique. Boutique often means you're more expensive, but because you don't have the overhead, you can save a lot.
Yes. I think when we go in and evaluate some of these companies that maybe they're coming from a PEO, a professional employer organization. So, and what that means is they're under an umbrella, someone else's EIN, and they're shared employment. So those employees under that employer are actually under that PEO as a employer. So it becomes really expensive because I think companies think, well, they're going to protect me. It's their liability. And that's not exactly how it works. What I think really is different with the PEO versus like an ASO platform is you have more control as the ASO rather than a PEO would be kind of telling you, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't do that. Those PEOs begin to be really costly when it comes to unemployment. So unemployment percentages will typically go up. And a lot of times too, what's interesting is when we're talking to these clients or prospects, they don't even know if they're with a PEO.
Yeah. How would you know if you're a PEO or a ASO? Who knows that?
A lot of times they don't know until they try to get out and say mid-year, right? If you're trying to change providers
of payroll.
Yes.
Okay. So this is your payroll service provider.
Yeah. And HR as well. So PEO offers everything.
Oh, all the benefits and stuff as well. Got it.
So if you're trying to change the end of a quarter and you're going to your current payroll provider and maybe being in a PEO and saying, well, can you provide me all of my records from January to, September, the end of September. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. And then at the end of the year, and you get into starting October 1st, you get into an ASO model, which is payroll only. And maybe they do offer, maybe it's with Magnet HR. And you get in October 1st through December, you're getting a W-2. Those employees are getting a W-2 from that PEO. From January through the end of September. And then from October 1st through the end of December, you're getting it from your own employer as a standalone ASO. A lot of companies don't understand that. It's confusing.
So they'll get two W-2s, one for one half of the year and one for the rest.
Because they worked for the PEO, technically. Companies don't realize that.
Interesting. And what are the benefits of one over the other?
I mean, I think these salespeople are out there selling it like, you have no liability. You're not going to get in trouble. We'll take it off for you.
What those PEOs, you mean?
Go read the IRS regs.
Yeah.
That's not what it says.
So you're paying a lot more and you're not really getting any help from a liability perspective.
Right. I talked to a prospect restaurant owner. They're about 65 employees. They're with a PEO. They offer all these services and they're like, we don't even know who our HR is because they don't ever talk to us.
Yeah, you have to probably be a certain size to get the kind of care that, you would need, right? You probably have to have a certain number of employees that most of these companies don't have. And that's true with any sort of working with any larger companies. You always need to have a certain number of licenses or, whatever it is in order to get the good care. Yeah, the good treatment, right? That's why you need a boutique agency like yours.
Yeah. And, I think what's different really with us is what sets us apart, right? Is the customer service.
Yeah.
So that is what's so important. And they know they can call the owner, which I really want them to use my team, but I'm there as well with my employees. So I typically know what's going on with every ticket that's coming through the system or any client call or any employee call. So, we try to track it. We have our KPIs and we know what's going on with each client.
Yeah, it's nice to get that kind of service, especially as a small business owner. I would imagine at that size, the founder is still pretty involved.
Yes.
And they want somebody that they can go to and know that they're getting the level of support, right? Where if once you get bigger and you have a established team in-house, the game changes, I think.
And I think that's what's really different is, right? I mean, you go to one of the big players out there that's very well known. That's great. We take their clients too. But it's typically because their systems, maybe they've been asking for reports that they haven't gotten in the last 2 years. So we're able to customize those solutions where some of those big players are not able to. They're public companies. You don't have the owner, right, or investors sitting there next to the payroll specialist that's trying to do 150 clients' payrolls all at once.
So tell me about kind of the savings you can bring to companies, because the numbers are huge. I was amazed when we were doing sort of the prep for this interview.
Yeah. So a lot of times, when we're calling on these, small to mid-sized businesses, right? For instance, we're working with one right now. They have about 230 employees. They're in multiple states, and they are with a PEO, and we're going to call them the Cadillac of PEOs. And we're probably somewhere between benefits and the HR fees, admin fees, and payroll taxes. So when I say taxes, that unemployment cost for, payroll services, we're probably somewhere around $300,000 in savings that we're going to be able to save them. But we're not putting them on a PEO. So really the difference is they're coming over from that PEO umbrella onto their own platform.
Wow.
And we're going to be managing everything for them.
That's significant.
Yes.
And is that's just because there's so much admin fees with these big PEO?
They get bundled together.
Yeah.
And so, when you go and sign up for a vendor, right? You just think, oh, well, that salesperson or whoever told me, like, I'm going to get this, this, and this. Awesome. And then you get onboarded, and 3 months down the road, you're like, wait a minute, I called an 800 line and I can't even get what I need. And it typically ends up like that. And then they kind of get stuck in it because they're not really looking at the contracts and saying, oh, well, you signed a 3-year contract with me. Well, there's probably some wiggle room to get out of it. But it's so important, to really look, because one of the most expensive things in a company, human capital and benefits. So we're excited to do things like that when we can save them money and they just didn't know they could have savings.
Right. Tell us a little bit about benefits and what are the expectations of employees when it comes to benefits these days? I remember when we're about the same age. When we started in corporate America, man, you got everything. Everything was covered all the time. And over the years, it's changed a lot. So what do you see as sort of the best practices in offering benefits?
I think with our clients, we'll run a census on all of the employees, which means, right, you're just looking at age, their dependents, they're carrying a spouse, right, something like that. And typically we'll go out and shop it to all the carriers. And once we get the rates back, we can kind of determine. And I think that's, again, what makes us a little different. We're just not going to stick you in a plan because the rates look good. We want to stick you in a plan that the plan design works for your group. And that's what makes us a little bit different. And I partner with Shoot Benefit Group, and he's been in business for about 35 years. I'm licensed, but I like to use him and his team because they focus more on that and have the relationship with the carriers and can really, look at the plan designs that will best fit our clients.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the most important issues around retaining employees right now?
Retaining employees. So I think that really has to do with the culture with the companies. I don't even know that it's about pay so much. It's sometimes about pay, right? But I think it's about the culture. They want to be treated good, have good benefits, have time off, have a good work-life balance. And, I was reading some reviews on a firm recently, and the employees will go through and say, yeah, the lunches were great. The gifts are good. The pay is really good. But the owner calls you in the middle of the night, yells at you, and yeah, it's like working 50, 60, 70-hour work weeks. And it's like, it's a terrible, toxic place. And I'm reading these reviews and I'm like, oh, wow, they really need some HR up in there.
Sometimes you have HR and it still doesn't change, right? You have to have
That is
you have
true.
to have a leadership that believes in people and believes in treating people well and knows that the team is the most important part, right? And I think that culture often, in my experience, comes from the top.
Yeah, and it does. And I think the HR people, when you are inside internal, right? I'll just use me as an example. You have to have that support from the executives for the employees to even act right. I think of parents, right? Like it's a playground. It's an adult playground and you've got your kids, the employees, and you've got your mom or dad in HR, and you've got the grandparents that are the executives, and everybody's trying to discipline and set rules and, how people are doing things and coming into work. And yes, I think it is very important that you have good relationship with the executive team and HR when you're in an organization. And I mean, I've come from larger organizations and then I broke off and started my own company, right? But I think being in those internal roles can be extremely difficult because they have a job. They want their paycheck, and you get kind of stuck because the owners or executives may want things one way. They may want you to get rid of that director over there in that department. And you're sitting there as the HR person going, we have no reason to fire them. And you have to kind of agree to keep your job. So you get really put in kind of a political situation, and it's not fun.
No.
And I think a lot of internal HR people out there deal with that. I mean, again, when you're dealing with investors or the board members or, the owners, and you've got a 500 employee group and the owner is sitting there going, get rid of them. And you're sitting back going, well, why? Because they haven't done anything. What reason do we have to get rid of them? I mean, are we replacing them?
Yeah, I have to imagine. I don't think I'd want to be in. I've had opportunities to move to HR, and I've been like, nope, I'm good.
It is. It's a different breed for sure. And healthcare is a whole nother breed.
Yeah,
That's a fun one. When you get doctors involved, that's fun.
So tell me more about how you started this business, because you said you were in sort of larger corporate America. Tell us your founder's story.
So I guess let's back up a little bit. So I started in accounting when I was going to school when I was young, and I was sitting behind a desk for a large, Rent-A-Center corporate. I was in fixed assets doing accounting, and I was sitting there thinking like, golly, I do not like sitting behind a desk like this. I want to go into sales and finance. So I went and worked for Plano Lincoln Mercury, if you know anything about that. They were on Plano Parkway and did not like that either.
Yeah.
So somehow I got called, I think I got a temp job, and I became an HR assistant. And so I started in healthcare, and I really enjoyed it. I started doing payroll 25 years ago, doing benefits, and we had reps all across the country. So I was dealing with multi-state as well. So I kind of learned early on, and I was working for an HR director. So I learned, a lot about HR. And then I think like 2 or 3 years into that, I wanted another job, make more money, of course, right? And that's what everyone wants to go do. And I got hired to work for a brand new hospital down in Dallas. And I was working for the COO, who was a nurse as well. And that started my career in really HR and growth.
Yeah.
And I was lucky because I got to work for executives. I never had to work for like HR directors except the one time. And I built a couple hospitals from the ground up. So Methodist being one of them. And that was a fun experience. You get to kind of, start building the entire HR department from scratch, hiring everyone that's going to be, in the hospital, which happened back then. I think we had about 125 employees. And you're like a one-man show, right? Because the corporate offices were somewhere else. So you were there on site with everyone, and I reported to the CEO. So it was nice, really, I think getting that support through the years that some HR people don't get because they're not reporting to, the executives or the owners.
And also having the insight into the business. I think when you have the opportunity to work for the C-suite, you get to learn more about how the business ticks, right? And I think sometimes you lose that. The further down you are in the organization, the harder it is. Just doesn't make it down as much in learning about how business works. So that's cool.
I think with you saying that, one of the things the CEO taught me was emotional intelligence. Like employees are going to get mad at you because you're sitting in the room when they get terminated, and you build relationships with these employees, right? They get to know you. They come and tell you stuff. You're kind of their mediator. My manager's being mean to me. Can you help me? Can we go talk to him? Whatever, right? So you build those relationships. But this guy taught me emotional intelligence. And that's where I think from there, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, So after that, I kept getting recruited by a PEO, actually the largest PEO in the country that's privately held. And they were actually acquired back in, I believe, 2017 by Paychex. But I was working for this company, Oasis Outsourcing, and quickly learned that my clients were unhappy. I carried I want to say about 1.7 million in revenue for clients, which equaled, I want to say like 45 clients. And the reason they wanted me to come on was they had a big nephrology group. So they needed somebody with a little bit of healthcare background. And I battled with it a little bit because I was leaving healthcare to go work for this huge company. And a couple years into it, I was like, I can do this on my own. And it took me about a year. I pulled all the pieces together, and then I knew I couldn't do both, right? And I had to split off, and I did, and got hired by this company that they were actually coming off of a PEO like Oasis and bringing everything in-house. And they had about 1,000 employees. They were in, I want to say, 35 states. And they needed somebody to help them set up everything, get their systems going, get their taxes set up in all the states. And that really is what kicked it off. And I just kind of grew from there.
And when was that?
That was in 2013.
Wow. 12 years? Am I doing the math right?
Yes.
That's incredible.
March will be 13. So yeah.
What have you learned about being a small business owner in 12 years? I just did a podcast last week, so I'm celebrating my 5-year anniversary, and I did 5 things I've learned in having this business for 5 years. So what are the things you've learned in the last 12?
I think there's a lot of trial and error, and you just do it, right? You just do it, see if it makes sense. If it doesn't work, you got to change it up. I mean, I think I've learned a lot. And, I think I wouldn't even say mistake. I think it was a pivot in my business was I stepped away for a couple years to do real estate. And I got CFOs would call me out to do assignments for them at hospitals, typically healthcare. So I stepped away for a couple years. And, when your clients find out you're not there all the time, sometimes imposes problems. They're like, well, where's Rory? And so I had to step back in like 2 years ago, full time. And so it's been great ever since. I have a great team and so thankful for my employees. They do a good job. And so to answer your questions, I think there's some highs and lows as a business owner. I don't know that there are ever failures though, because you learn from everything that you do, right? So it's definitely a learning process and journey through the years.
And it's full of highs and lows. My son has just started his own business and had his first kind of like kick in the teeth. And, just something, he was disappointed by something. And I was like, his stepdad and I were both entrepreneurs, right? I'm a 4th generation entrepreneur. It's like, yep, It happens, right? Like you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And you're going to have days where you love your business and you love your job and you can't believe this is your life. And then you're going to have days where you're like, screw it. I'm out. I'm going to go work at Walmart as a cash register. They don't even have people at the cash register anymore, but I'm going to work somewhere in Walmart because I just can't do it anymore. I never want to look at this business again. I'm going to burn my computer.
Well, one of the things, don't ever give up, right? There's millionaires out there that have lost it all. And the only thing that sets them apart is they keep on going.
So many people I've sat here with have gone to a place where they were like, I didn't know how I was going to stay open, right? Or this thing was like, I was barely making it, or, and sometimes it looks good on the outside, but it's not necessarily on the inside. And I think it's one of the challenges with social media is sometimes we only post the good stuff. We don't post the bad stuff too, right? I try to post both as much as I can because I think it's important to be like, hey, I had a crappy day, right? We all have crappy days. Like, let's normalize having crappy days and talking about having crappy days because otherwise we're just creating a world that doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. It's never always perfect, for sure.
Never. So what's next for you? What's next for your company?
We're in kind of a growth phase right now, and it's really been fun, kind of, right? Because I've been back in it 100%, doing what I love to do. And I mean, we compete with the biggest players out there, and I love bringing over their business. But again, it's that customer service and really understanding who your clients are. And you don't have to make $1 million on your clients to give them good service and do the right thing. And I think that's really where I enjoy helping these small to mid-sized companies. And, it's just like talking to the lady. She owns a restaurant, 60 employees. We're trying to pull her over. They're with a PEO and not giving them good service. I mean, I think it's so important for these business owners are out there like us, right? Trying to do their business and provide services and do what they love to do. And then in the background, they have problems with their vendors. Well, we don't want them to have problems with their payroll and their benefits and their HR. So we take that off their plate.
That's an amazing service. And I'm sure lots of people are going to need you right now and didn't even realize that you were there. So if they're listening right now, how can they find you?
magnethrgroup.com, or our email address is support@magnethr.net, actually. So .com for the website, magnethrgroup.com, and support@magnethr.net is our email.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I loved being on the show.